to another episode excuse me, I'm sorry everybody. Welcome to another episode of Executive Talk. Those that are here live with us in our studio audience, and also those that are watching us live. Those that are on Facebook Live, please participate. If you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them on the Facebook live stream. We'll go ahead and answer those in a little bit. In today's show, I want to go ahead and introduce, I have a couple of questions for you. And this is a segment called Did You Know? Studio audience, did you know that 20% of U.S. students will complete high school on time? How many people knew that already? I don't know. This guy, he already knew that. He's shaking his head, yes. 49% of U.S. employers recognize that talent shortages and the ability to serve their clients. How many people knew that? There's a lot of business professionals out there right now that are having challenges with the new generation as far as the workforce is concerned. 36% of Americans felt their financial situation was out of control. How many people knew that? No? Okay. On Facebook, how many people knew that? 91% of millennials wish they had more access to entrepreneurial education programs. How many people would agree with that? This is what's going on in our world nowadays. That's what we have to pay attention to in today's show, the new transition. And there's something special about this new transition that we're not paying attention to, that we're not understanding about the high school years. And that high school year, as you guys know, is from freshman to senior, 9th to 12th grade. And there is something approaching ahead for millennials nowadays that we as adults, we didn't have to go through. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and that's what we're going to address. And to address in this topic, we're going to talk about become invested. What does that mean to you as an entrepreneur? What does that mean to you as an adult? What can you do right now to actually help our high schoolers to help them through the next transition? Paulo Diaz with Junior Achievement, he's the Vice President of Programs. He's with us today to talk to us a little bit further, to actually tell us from a junior achievement perspective what they do and how they're able to help this transition. So without further ado, please help me and welcome Paulo Diaz. How you doing, Paulo?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
So before we get started, just give us a little background on who you are, and because I know there's a lot of people out there in our studio audience who have never met you before.
Sure. Sometimes I haven't met myself before. It's been about 19 or 20 years since I've been in high school, Maurice. Okay. And so as you brought that up, it kind of made me recall what I learned about when I was in high school. So as Maurice mentioned, I am with Junior Achievement. I actually started out as a volunteer with Junior Achievement.
Okay.
Back in 2007, my wife was a teacher, and she was teaching at a very low-income school up in the Thornton Federal Heights area. And someone had asked me to volunteer to teach a JA program in her second grade classroom. And it was teaching these low-income second graders about different types of jobs in their community, talking about taxes, government workers, talking about how money circulates, production, all that good stuff. And I thought, wow, this stuff is really relevant. So then I jumped on board with Junior Achievement, 2007. I've been there for 10 years now, and things that I wish that I learned when I was younger. So as the Vice President of Programs, the reason why I'm still there is because I truly do believe in the mission of JA. I remember when I graduated high school, way back when, class of 1998. Back then, yeah, exactly. Back then I was required to take 0.5 business credit, and so I took accounting. So great, I understand those general ledgers and those green forms and all that good stuff. But what it didn't prepare me for was what would happen about a month after I graduated from high school, which is I got this nice, shiny silver credit card in the mail. So what's a naive 17, 18-year-old going to do? Well, he maxes that out. Yeah, exactly. Charged it. And then so, back then, 1998, then they send you a shinier gold one. And then you max that out too. And so, you get into like this really deep trouble. And so it was at that point that I realized how important it is to teach kids about money, teach them about financial education, which is why as soon as I started teaching in my wife's class, I wanted to make sure that these kids learn that, especially now being a father myself, I have the opportunity to educate my kids as well.
Absolutely. And so I know Paulo for, I think it's been 9, 8, yeah, something like that.
I had more hair back then.
I didn't.
Oh, I didn't. I knew that.
Well, let's talk about the background of Junior Achievement for those of us that aren't aware, because I know Junior Achievement has been around. You guys are located downtown. But there's still a lot of people who have never heard of Junior Achievement and what they actually do. So give us the synopsis.
Yeah, so Junior Achievement, really our whole goal is to teach kids about financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and career readiness. And the way that we do that is we like to bring volunteers into the classroom to teach our program. It's important for kids to understand these concepts as young as kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade. And so we've been around for a long time, actually since 1919. Started out by Theodore Vail, who was a president of what is now known as AT&T, as well as Horace Moses, who ran a paper company, and then Murray somebody, he was a senator in Massachusetts way back then. And what it started out as was it was an after-school high school program where kids would meet with a business advisor. They would come up with an idea for a product. They would build the product. They would market the product, sell the product, make money off the product. And we still have that program today. It's still called JA Company Program.
Okay.
But about the mid-1970s, we started to be a little bit more into the classroom, working with middle schoolers. And then a few years after that, we started working with elementary schoolers as well. Okay. We've decided it's never too young to start teaching kids about saving money, buying things you need versus buying things you want, really how life works, the opportunities that present themselves out there. And so, yeah, we're a worldwide organization. Our worldwide headquarters is over in Boston, Massachusetts, and our JA USA headquarters is down in Colorado Springs, so just down the road from us.
Gotcha. Okay. And so speaking of JA Reach, there's one thing that we should know about junior achievement. There's a lot of people who understand junior achievement from a local point of view, but we got to understand that junior achievement has expanded for quite some time. I mean, you said 1919, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. That's before my wife was born.
Okay. All right, she saw that. She knows that.
Didn't tell her about this.
You have to deal with that. All right. So, so from a worldwide perspective, you guys are 10 million students in over 100 countries with over 470,000 volunteers. So break those down because we have quite a few statistics here. We have worldwide, USA, and also Rocky Mountain.
Yep. So we have various JA offices throughout the world, obviously. We have JA of Africa, JA Europe, JA of Asia, and our particular office is part of JA USA. And so with that, we have over 120 JA area offices in the country, in the United States itself. JA Rocky Mountain is just one of them. And so we cover basically from Douglas County all the way to parts of Wyoming. And so with that, our particular office, the JA Rocky Mountain office, which I just mentioned, we reached over 126,000 students last year, teaching them about financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and work readiness. And with that, we utilize so many volunteers. We utilize, I think, over 6,000 volunteers. Yeah. Because these people will never meet me. I'm not the face of junior achievement. Our president is not the face of junior achievement. The face of junior achievement really is the volunteers because they're the ones who provide those enriching experience for the students. Gotcha.
And we'll talk about volunteers a little bit, but just real quick, are you finding that a lot of people are jumping on board to become a volunteer?
We absolutely are. Now, it's obviously our programs are predicated on the volunteer availability. So without volunteers, we unfortunately can't run those programs in those particular classrooms. But we are finding that a lot of people do jump on with us, and the reason why is because a lot of people believe in the importance of making sure that kids are ready for their future, so they don't run into the same mishaps that I did financially that we spoke about earlier. So kids are starting to think about careers at a much earlier age, because the sooner you start thinking about those and what the future could look like, then you're more prepared by the time you go into college. They're not like you and me who switched our majors like 27 times when we were in college and wasted thousands of dollars.
That's right.
But basically, we want to start getting kids to start thinking about careers so they're a little bit more focused in school. And they see that what they're learning in the classroom really does equate to what they expect the real world to look like. And so we have our particular office, the Rocky Mountain office. We have over 60-plus board members from a lot of Fortune 100 companies that you've heard of throughout this Denver area. And the reason why they invest in us is two things. One is they want to make sure that the kids are prepared for the future. They want to invest in their kids. The other part, though selfishly, but it benefits us all, is they want to make sure that the next generation of workforce is ready to work for them. Making sure that these kids are prepared so by the time that they graduate high school or graduate college, they're more likely to be ready to work for them and work with them as this economy continues to grow years down the road.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and play truth or myth. You guys work with me. So we have students are having this conversation at home around the dinner table with their parents. Is that a truth or is that a myth?
Did you have this conversation with your parents around the dinner table?
Never.
Correct. Me neither. I was one of 6 kids, and my parents were absolutely great. And, we talked about school and all that stuff, but we never talked about, hey, so what do you want to be when you grow up? Or, hey, here's how you budget. And my dad was an accountant, right? And I think the fact of the matter is when your parents are working, by the time that you get home, you don't really think about that stuff. You're trying to block out work, so you're not talking to your kids about work. You're not talking to your kids about jobs. You're not talking to your kids about starting their own businesses.
Sure. And these are major misconceptions that we go into. We look at these kids and there's a big assumption bubble when it comes to that age group of that freshman and also that senior. So these are some of the truth and myths that we're talking about. So if you look at this one, would you guys agree, or what would you guys choose, truth or myth, that teachers should teach this information in the classroom? Would you guys say it's a truth or a myth?
I think they should, but it isn't.
Okay. Well, anybody else? You guys agree? Okay. Paulo?
They absolutely should. 100% agree with the audience over here. But the bottom line is teachers don't. The thing is there's very little time in the classroom to teach these particular concepts. When was the last time you guys were inside a classroom? Except for you. Sorry, Luna. I know you've been in a classroom recently. But when you walk into a classroom today, as you hear about budget cuts that schools are going through, you have less and less paraprofessionals. So what you have is you basically have one classroom teacher with 28 students who have 28 different needs, and you're expected to teach them about math. You're expected to teach them about literacy, because those are the things that they are tested on. The world that we are in today, what the teachers are tested on is what they're going to tend to focus on, because that's how we are evaluating how effective they are as teachers. So truth be told, back in 2008, they passed a House bill that required financial literacy to be taught in the classrooms. If you can think of where we are in 2008, it's the same exact reason why we wanted to make sure all this stuff is taught in the classroom. But the fact is it's only assessed in 3 grade levels, in high school, in 7th grade, and in 4th grade. And again, going back to what I talked about earlier, if it's not being assessed, then the teachers are not spending a whole lot of time focusing on it.
Okay.
But what I will tell you is a lot of teachers do understand the importance of this. It's just hard for them to kind of fit in with their curriculum to make sure that the kids are understanding math and literacy, because that's what's expected from them.
Gotcha. All right. So I have one more truth or myth for you guys. Volunteers do not add value to teaching the curriculum. Would you guys think that's true, or do you think that's a myth?
I think that's a myth. It's false. They do add.
Okay. All right. Agree. Facebook, you guys agree? Give us an answer.
It absolutely is false. Yeah, you're right. I think, sometimes volunteers are afraid to go into the classroom because it's like the quarterback for the Denver Broncos or the head coach of the Denver Broncos, right? Everybody thinks that they can do it better. But when you're in it, you really can't, right? So it's thinking, hey, I could do as good of a job teaching. But the bottom line is you're not expected to do a good job teaching. What the volunteers add, the value that the volunteers do add into the classroom, is they have the opportunity to share their real world experiences and have the students hear that they don't typically hear. Because the kids know what their parents do. The kids know what teachers are and doctors and dentists and all that stuff. But they don't know what a human resource manager is or an accountant and things like that. And that's exactly what we want to expose them to. That, and I don't know about you, but my kids don't often listen to me, right? It often sounds better coming from somebody else. It often sounds better when it's not coming from your teacher and when it's not coming from your parent. I remember one time I was coaching my daughter in basketball. Never coach your kid in basketball. Because what happens is I tell her to come in and she refuses to because it's daddy doing the coaching, right? It's the same thing with teachers or with parents. If you're trying to talk to your kids about jobs, if you're trying to talk to your kids about money, oftentimes they will tune you out. But if it's somebody else, it's, wow, for some reason this person actually adds value to something that I'm supposed to know, and it creates that much more of an importance.
I got you. Now, do you find a lot of volunteers feel like they need to be in a specific field in order to be an effective volunteer?
Absolutely not. I think, the most important thing when it comes to volunteering in the classroom through Junior Achievement is just somebody who wants to make an impact on the lives of students. It doesn't matter what career field you're in. It doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted. If you just sit there and care about the kids and you want them to learn something, the activities will guide itself. It's very turnkey, so we can hand it to a volunteer, we can train you, and you're pretty much ready to go. And it's all about sharing your story and sharing your experiences. It doesn't matter what field you're in. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's just willing to take the time to meet with those students, because just like anything else, if you naturally care about somebody, they'll pick up a little bit more than you otherwise would have anticipated.
Gotcha. So, and I think a lot of volunteers or people would come into the mindset of these kids are going to be rough on me.
Correct.
Now, is that true?
It depends on what school you're going to. Truth be told, we had in Finance Park. It's a field trip that middle schoolers take. And from a JA perspective, we were like, wow, that was kind of a rough day because, the kids were doing this and the kids were doing this. So I personally called all 16 volunteers that were there on that day to kind of, hey, how was your experience? And I was like, so the kids weren't that misbehaved? And they're like, nope, it's what I expected from 8th graders. Like, that's what your expectations are. And really, so we look at it from a different lens. Like, I see what it's supposed to look like, and I have my own particular style of what it looks like. But really, from a volunteer's perspective, what you're doing is you're just engaging with students, and you're meeting with these students, and you're talking to them about careers, and you're talking to them about things that you wish you knew when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And so as long as you're kind of focused on that, keeping your eyes on the prize of making sure these kids are picking that kind of stuff up, kids are generally kind on you. And to be honest, too, the teacher is always in the classroom, so it's not like a volunteer is going in there of, all right, picking up my Starbucks, and I'll see you in 45 minutes.
Right.
The teacher's there in the classroom, so the teacher is the one who's doing the classroom management. They're there to support you. They're there to help group the students. If you are having trouble explaining a concept, the teachers are there to kind of step in. And so really, the volunteer's job is to be the one who's delivering this stuff, and kids have fun.
Gotcha. All right. And so I want to take us back to those, to that did you know portion of the show. And we got to review this because these are important statistics. So we have 20% of U.S. students will complete high school on time. 49% of U.S. employers recognize that talent shortages and the ability to serve their clients. 36% of Americans felt their financial situation was out of control, and 91% of millennials wish they had more access to entrepreneurial education programs. So what are the millennials facing going forward? Because it's the new day and age. Like you said earlier, when we were growing up, there's some challenges that are here now that we didn't have growing up, but the millennials are having different challenges. So what are they facing?
Sure. So some of the challenges that millennials are facing, for example, is they're graduating with a lot of college debt. We're talking about tens of thousands and some hundreds of thousands of college debt. This is the most educated generation, and so they are kind of walking away from it, pretty much already in the hole. You couple that with the fact that unemployment is much higher for millennials than it is for the regular population. I read a Forbes study that was done last year where it said, I think, unemployment is about 4.9% in the country, but for millennials, it's 12.8 or 12.9%, something high. And so what you're looking at is now you have this educated group of individuals who are graduating from college, who have a massive amount of debt, and now they can't find a job. And it's also misleading to look at the unemployment rate, because when you're looking at the unemployment rate, what they're not counting is a lot of those jobs that people supposedly have are typically part-time, non-living wages. So it really is misleading. So that's why you might find a lot of millennials still living with their parents, because that's the only way that they can get by. I mentioned the companies earlier. The reason why they invest in JA is because they want to make sure that these kids are prepared for the future. So that's why they are working with these kids and they are investing in JA, is because they want them to be ready. They want them to make choices that are good for them and not necessarily what your parents told you to do. They want them to start thinking about careers at a younger age, because you see some who end up graduating from college already, and then they're like, oh wait, I should go back to school because that's not really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to enter, the skills or trades, and we want them to start recognizing that earlier. We're not sitting here saying, hey, you must go to college. We're sitting here saying, what is it that you want to do? What kind of careers can you explore? So then that way, the sooner you realize that, the sooner you're, getting into that particular field, learning about that field, as opposed to, wasting all this money to decide that that's not what you wanted to do and basically start over.
Sure. And you said a couple of companies like oil and gas, the millennials aren't really going for careers in oil and gas going forward. Is that?
Yeah, because I think, we as parents are talking to our kids of, no, you must get a 4-year degree. You must get a master's degree. You must get a doctorate. That's great for some people, but that's not usually great for some other people. Each individual is different, and that's the thing is we want to empower young people to own their economic success. I once spoke, just last week, I spoke to someone in the oil and gas industry, and she was talking about how they're in trouble right now. They're going to face a shortage because they have so many people who are retiring, but not enough people in that industry to really start working in there. So that's the other thing that we do, is we try to talk to students about what careers do we have a talent gap in, and what we're trying to fill, in hopes that they'll be attracted to that particular field, or at least understand where our job needs are.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So then that leads us to the JA curriculum. How do you guys prepare these students for the future?
Sure.
based on, what you're talking about?
Yeah, so most of our curriculum is developed in our JAUSA headquarters down in Colorado Springs. We have K through 12 curriculum, and they either focus specifically on or including all of entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and work readiness. And so there's different delivery methods that volunteers can teach them in. One is Jane a Day, in which the program is all taught in one day. And the other one is a traditional where the volunteer can coordinate with their teacher on a convenient time for both of them to teach one lesson at a time. It's a good way to develop and build relationships with those students over a longer period of time. We also have experiential programs.
Okay.
One is called JA Business Week, which is designed for high school students. My friend Oliver is down there who is a product of JA Business Week. And what that is students get to live on a college campus for a week, and they work with a group of students to work on a real project. So our first year students work with OtterBox. Second-year students work with Aero Electronics, and our third-year students develop their own product themselves.
Okay.
And what they do is they compete in small groups, they go through workshops, and then they make their final presentation to give them those life skills as well as what's it like to be in the workforce, to actually work on a real hands-on project. And they get to experience life in college. They get to spend a whole week at Johnson & Wales University, live with a roommate, plus or minus. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we don't know, but at least they get to experience that to see if college is for them, as we
Absolutely.
talked about earlier. And then we have this program called JA Finance Park, which is another experiential program that I mentioned, in which the students learn all about budgeting, cash versus credit, taxes, income, all that good stuff. That one's actually taught by the teachers in the classroom over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. And then they take to this field trip to this place called JA Finance Park, which is located inside the American Furniture Warehouse in Thornton.
Okay.
Jake Jabs was kind enough to donate that space for us. What the students get is they get to be an adult for a day. They get to be you and me, Maurice, where they are given a personal profile of you are a manufacturer's representative, you are making this as your gross annual income, you are married, have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, go balance your budget. Oh, we also give them a credit score, which is also great. So as part of that, they're working with volunteers inside their little stores where they are, the volunteers are telling them things that they have to think about when they're in those particular purchasing groups. So they'll learn about childcare and what they have to think about. They learn about investments, insurance. It's not about just buying the fancy car. It's how much will it cost you to replace that car if you total it.
That's right.
Things like that. And so we have volunteers who walk them through the step. And then they develop a budget, and then they go shopping, and then from that, they get to learn what it's like to actually have to live on an income or to live on a budget, as opposed to here's your X amount of $1,000, buy a fancy car, buy a fancy house, that's it. Now you have to feed your kids, and you have to go shopping, and you have to do all that stuff. The program I just mentioned, JA Finance Park, it's actually pretty neat. If anyone wants to check it out, I'll be happy to give you a tour myself. It was recently recognized by the Harvard University's Global Education Initiative, or Innovation, as being an innovative program that teaches 21st century financial literacy education. So it's a highly regarded program because it's really a great way to teach kids about money and what it's like to be an adult, so they're not walking into it completely blindfolded.
Yes, that's huge. That's huge. And so we talked about this, and we alluded to this earlier, the value of volunteers. I know a lot of people want to do volunteer, but again, it's that nervousness of being shut down and going into this school, this environment, and going to this school, and nervous about the interaction that they're going to have with the kids. And so I know a couple of people who are nervous about their industry. My industry doesn't really complement what the curriculum of JA is. So talk to us about the value of the volunteers and how that works out.
It's funny you pointed that out, because oftentimes when I see volunteers on the day of when they're supposed to teach the program, one of the things that they say is, I do presentations all day for adults and members of my team, but holy cow, 7-year-olds terrify me. And then I will ask them if they watched Kindergarten Cop the night before, because it's completely unfamiliar to them, and it's been so many years since they've gotten a chance to go to school, which I totally understand. But studies show that volunteers who are engaged and experienced have the ability to build skills in confidence, in connections, and really in collaboration, things like that. And so the reason why we have volunteers teaching the program is they have that added element that most people can't do. We talked about that earlier in terms of why parents are often tuned out by their particular kids. I remember this one volunteer that I was training with First Bank. The first time I met with him, we were just kind of going over the stuff. This guy just out of college, and I asked him, hey, so how did you hear about JA? And he said, actually, I was a JA kid when I was in 3rd grade. I was like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah, I remember my volunteer's name was this. He worked from this particular place. He brought this, and he taught me about this, this, this. So you're talking about 13 years of K through 12 education plus college. And the reason why it stood out was because it was somebody else delivering the program, the curriculum, and not just the teacher. So it wasn't just another thing that the teacher was teaching. It was somebody else cared enough to leave his job or place of employment to come into my classroom to make sure that I'm understanding these particular lessons.
Okay. All
And so that's the value that volunteers bring, is it adds that element of being able to remember it.
That's it. That's it. So become invested. What does that mean to you from a JA perspective and what you do?
Becoming invested really is, caring about what this future is going to look like. All these young people in school today, like our friend Luna down front, they're the ones who are going to be running this country one day. They're going to be the ones who are working in these particular businesses. And so we want to make sure that this world is prepared for them. So then that way, this world is much better off financially. We don't experience what we did in 2008 or years past in which people didn't spend wisely. And so that's what becoming invested is caring enough about our kids today to make sure that, and caring about what our country is going to look like in the future, to make sure that our kids are prepared.
Okay. So then if you were to give us a final thought as to the volunteers, the potential volunteers out there, what would that be?
It really is all about what is that thing that you wish you learned when you were in school, now that you're a grown-up. Sometimes I go into schools and I go into a classroom and this one little kid will be like, "Are you so-and-so's dad?" And there's one commercial with Blake Griffin, I think, once upon a time, that was a year or two ago. And so I would play off of that commercial and I'd be like, no, I'm actually visiting him from the future. And the reason why I mess with those kids, if you think about it, I'm just kind of messing with those kids, but I tell them I'm visiting him from the future. And I think that what we're teaching right now is very important and he needs to tune in. And that's why I'm visiting him. And that's exactly what JA is that opportunity to take a step back, think about what you wish you knew when you were in school, and then be able to pass that knowledge on to the kids now that you're older and now that you're wiser. And so, getting involved has never become easier. We have our website, we have my contact information, all that good stuff. But it really is all about just caring about the kids and making sure that they're prepared and wanting them to know what you wish you knew that would have made you better prepared than what you were when you first got into the working world.
Awesome. All right. Well, here's their contact information for anybody that's looking to reach Junior Achievement and Paulo. http://jacolorado.org and also pdiaz@jacolorado.org. And also the office phone number 303-260-6287. I want you guys to pay attention to something. The key word that Paulo said was future. As adults, we can take these moments and really skip a beat. And it will affect us in the future if we do not pay attention to our millennials right now that are coming into adulthood. Their troubles will become our troubles. That's just how that works. So volunteering, being part of what they're doing, part of their mission. And as you guys know, if you guys have been following Executive Talk for any time, you guys seen how many people we have in education. Executive Talk is really putting a huge focus on education. Please get involved. If you have the opportunity, please get involved, reach out to Paulo and see what you can do. I want to thank you, Paulo, for coming on. We appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Maurice.
All right.
I appreciate it.
We're going to have you guys keep on sharing the information. Let people know that we exist on Facebook, also on LinkedIn. But in the meantime, Paulo and I, we actually have to get back to work. So you guys have a good day. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you, Paulo.
Thanks, Maurice.
All right, man.
Thank you.